Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Ben 10 Retrospectives. And today we're going to be looking at what the DVDs say is episode 47 of Classic Ben 10, Goodbye and Good Riddance. And in this episode, it's pretty much the end of the summer. It's pretty much, summer vacation is over, Max has to, and so because of this, Max has to drop off Ben and Gwen back at their home, so he's driving back home to Bellwood, which is Ben's hometown, but Ben, of course, doesn't want the summer to end because they've been doing all this cool, exciting stuff. He's been saving lives, being a hero. He just likes all that stuff, but pretty much like any kid who's dealt with summer vacation, he doesn't want it to go. Of course, he still wants to try and do his hero stuff even in Bellwood, but Max tells him that he has to keep it a secret even now. So he drops Ben off. He drops Ben off back at his home, and we finally meet Ben's parents, Carl, Frank, and Sandra. No, Sandra and Carl. Frank is Ben's uncle, but anyway, Sandra and Carl. So Ben, of course, they're happy to see Ben. Everything's nice and happy, but of course they don't know about it. Of course, Ben still has to keep it secret even from them because Max didn't even tell them about his time as a plumber. But in the meantime, Ben starts using the Omnitrix to pretty much just do all these extra chores around the house, like clean his room, take out the garbage, etc. Pretty much he's just abusing it, and the next day at school, he keeps hearing all the kids there talking about all of his past hero exploits, which if you actually listen to the conversations, they do reference many episodes in the series. But anyway, pretty much Ben wants to tell them all he's got superpowers, but he can't, or if he's about to, something comes up. So pretty much she's just kind of somewhat miserable, but it gets interrupted as during gym class, a couple of Vilgax's robot drones come in and attack the class, and they're looking for Ben. So everyone's running, everyone's going over, so Ben goes alien to fight them, and of course he gets them in the cafeteria, and Max comes in because he said that he apparently got a signal that robot drones were in the area, and of course Ben knows that Vilgax probably sent them because they looked like his drones, but a bunch of kids, the police come in as well as a few students, and just before they come in, the Omnitrix times out, but of course Ben still can't tell them he's an alien. He's a superhero, and pretty much he's just even more he's just becoming more and more miserable. But afterwards, Max decides to drive Ben home, even giving him his little souvenir box. But when Ben gets home, he finds that the interior of the house and the entire back have pretty much been destroyed. And the one that destroyed it was, of course, Vilgax, who has Ben's father. Who has Ben's father. So, of course, Ben's father's wondering what's going on. Who is this guy? Who is this guy? And though not to the degree that you would think, which I'll bring up later. But of course, Ben, knowing Vilgax, goes alien, saves his father, and he asks why Max didn't detect Vilgax. It turns out that the drones that attacked Ben before were decoys that disguised his coming to Earth, while at the same time disguising many other robot drones. As it turns out, Vilgax, to finally get the perfect revenge on Ben, he plans to pretty much not only destroy Ben and his family, but pretty much destroy all of Bellwood just to say F you to Ben. So Ben is able to outmaneuver most of Vilgax's drones, but in the process, Vilgax gets away and the rest of their house is destroyed. And of course, Ben's father is just like, I should never have let you go. I should not have done this, yada, yada, and all that. But Ben tells him that none of this is Max's fault because there's supposed to be some kind of subplot between Ben's father and Max about how they never got along because Max had to keep his plumber life a secret, which I admit really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. There's no real resolution, and it's mostly implied. And by implied, I mean not really even mentioned beyond talking about it. It's not that well done. But either way, the dog survives, so that's a thing. But anyway, it cuts to later as Vilgax's drones are pretty much destroying Bellwood, and at this time Max has arrived, and he has Gwen because she originally he was going to take her to a dance recital, or karate tournament. Yeah, it was a karate tournament, but it got canceled. So they all have guns. They're shooting down robots, and when all of it's just when it's just Vilgax left, Ben goes alien. Ben goes alien to fight him, but it turns out that Cash and JT were in the area when all the carnage was going down. So when Ben goes alien, they see him transform, and at that point he pretty much tells them that he is every single alien, that all those alien heroes that have been appearing. So he faces Vilgax, but Vilgax is too strong, which is kind of strange, but whatever. But Vilgax is too strong, but it turns out that they have a backup plan, because earlier in the episode, when on Ben's first day of school, Ben's father was the one that drove him, and he offered to show Ben around his new work, because he's the new worker for he's the new maintenance he's the new maintainer of the pipe works beneath Bellwood. So with that in mind, Ben gets Vilgax to go into the pipe works beneath Bellwood, and it turns out Ben's father uncorked one of the pipes and then activated a fuse, and because Ben's accelerated, Ben got his father out in time, but the fuse lit up the gas, and pretty much the entire thing is blown up with Vilgax inside. It destroys the pipeworks across Bellwood. I think he's probably fired, but Vilgax is destroyed. And now that Cash and JT know about Ben's secret, it pretty much spreads around, and so now everyone knows about Ben's secret. So the next day at school, Ben is more respected, and it turns out Gwen's transferred to Bellwood. But just before they can settle into class, Animo attacks, so Ben goes hero to fight him, and that's how the episode ends. Okay, first off, I want to explain where this episode's placement is. This episode was originally the last episode of Ben 10. This was the very last episode, and of course it was marketed as the lost episode because the storyline that was done in it, Ben coming home after the summer vacation's over, that he has to get used back, he's got to get used to normal life again. This storyline was done in Ben 10 3 times. The first was in Race Against Time, the second one was in this episode, and the third was in Ben 10 Destroy All Aliens. And it wasn't until the third time that it was finally made canon. Originally Race Against Time was the canon one, but then they kind of sort of discredited it in Ultimate Alien, and then Destroy All Aliens came out, and that became the kind of the bridge. But otherwise, this episode was aired after Race Against Time, so they knew they couldn't. So obviously, it couldn't have been the canon one at that time. So it was marketed as a lost episode, which I'm gonna be a conspiracy nut here, but I honestly believe that this episode was meant to be the final episode of Ben 10, because if you actually watch it, it does kind of have a bit of finality to it. It's the final day of summer vacation. Ben is coming home. We see his parents. His secrets. He has a final showdown with Vilgax. His secrets revealed. I think that was meant to be. I think this was originally meant to be how the series was going to end, but because Race Against Time was going to be made, and it was pretty much doing the exact same story, and Cartoon Network was going to be making Ben 10 Alien Force, which was a sequel to Ben 10. This episode could not be a thing, so it was kind of thrown on the drawing board. But then someone said, "Screw it, let's air it anyway, but let's advertise it as a lost episode, as a non-canon episode," which it is shown to be which is what they advertise it as not a lost episode that's non-canon. Even the beginning and the end of the episode is like the Gwen 10 episode, where it's a comic book format letting you know this isn't canon, it's just another imaginary story. But even then, I think even if it wasn't the lost episode, honestly, I think the episode on its own is perfectly nice. I think as a finale, it would have worked as it does feel like an ending, and so to speak. But otherwise, it's a good episode. It is a good episode, but it also is flawed. As I mentioned before, the storyline between Max apparently not getting along with Ben's father because of his polymer history, that's kind of thrown on the wayside. It's not important to the plot. It doesn't serve anything. It's never resolved, and the only time we ever see this quote unquote tension is in conversations, which all they really do is talk about how there's tension, which, yeah, I don't like. On top of that, there's the whole. I think the finale. I think there's the finale, where how people are reacting to Ben being to Ben having all these alien heroes, which honestly, I'm kind of on the fence about. Like, on the one hand, I like the fact that it kind of ties into how the Ben 10,000 episodes are. Ben's famous, he's a hero, and even how Vilgax is defeated, he's blown up. Which, if you watch the Ben 10,000 episode, as I think I mentioned this, Ben 10,000 himself said that he left Vilgax in pieces the last time he saw them, so that could easily be what it is. And it's even speculated that this episode does take place in that timeline, in that future. But I think for the rest, but honestly, but when people were reacting to, even the way people are reacting to Ben being a hero, it seems too casual. And I'm not saying that they're like, oh, cool, Ben's a superhero. There actually is surprise. There is legitimate surprise. It's just I think there'd be more. Because in the scene where, sorry, my dog just jumped on the bed. In the scene where when Ben's father learns about Ben's history, when Vilgax is there, destroyed their home, his question. I mentioned how I kind of said in this thing how he is questioning Ben, and that does happen. But his words exactly are, Ben, who did you and your grandfather meet this summer? There is questioning. It's just not as much because once it's all resolved, he just kind of accepts it. Once the Vilgax is gone, he just accepts the fact that my son can turn into aliens, and he's fighting bad guys. Neat. Which, it's just kind of weird. It just feels weird. And then we have and then we kind of have the reveal of Ben's powers. People again are kind of accepting of it. There is again apprehension, which I'm okay with, but not as much as you would think. I think you can kind of make the excuse for probably, and I don't know. I just feel like there should be more questioning to this. That when people hear all about these things, and suddenly this kid that's just kind of that's kind of a little full of himself suddenly comes in and says, "I'm a superhero now." You think there'd at least be some bit of a transition to that, but instead it's just like, "Oh, superhero, go save the world." That's it. Again, it's not horror. It's not bad. It's not bad, but I think it could have been done better. I personally think it could have been done better, which I might talk about in the future, but that's a very big maybe. But either way, I still think this is a good episode. I think if it was the finale for the episode, it would have been fine. But otherwise, as a lost episode, it's a good episode. It's nothing really that new. It doesn't really bring much new for the Ben going back to school angle. The school angle, because it does have it is a nice storyline, but otherwise it's just more Ben. It's just more Ben action, and I think that you can kind of tell that it was aired after Race Against Time, because there are some callbacks to that episode. Like, I don't like, because the name of Ben's hometown, Bellwood, was given in Race Against Time, and you knew that even the name of Ben's parents was there. Pretty much all that stuff was introduced in Race Against Time, and there's some callbacks to it in this episode, but otherwise, I think it's just a good episode. It's a nice little bit of a topper, because this was the last episode of the series. It is a nice finale, and while it wasn't considered canon at the time, it was still entertaining to watch. So, and even now, it's still nice to watch. So, yeah, nothing really much to this episode. Just good episode. What's up? Good episode. So, yeah. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and tune in next week where we look at the first of the final two-parter of the series that brings up the finale to this series story arc, which only really had one episode of build-up prior. So, yeah. Again, thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I'll see you next week. Take care.